The NBA 82-game grind is done, and now the real fun begins. The NBA playoffs are here, and it's time for all the high-stakes drama, clutch moments, and jaw-dropping plays. I can't wait. If you're looking to make the playoffs even more exciting, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered as an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in games all the way through to the finals, now's the time to back your favorite players and teams as they chase glory. All season long, DraftKings has been the go-to spot for NBA player props, and that does not stop now. Want to make your playoff experience even more intense? Try placing a bet on your favorite player's performance. Will they drop 30 points, 40, or more? It's your call. Ready to place your first bet? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Lock in your bets. Let's make this playoff run unforgettable. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Make it a playoff run to remember with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. That's code HOOPS for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great week. We've officially made it to postseason basketball. We've lived up to the expectations. The play-in games have been pretty highly entertaining over the course of the last few years, and the Grizzlies and the Warriors gave us another great one tonight as the Warriors escape down the stretch a crazy run from the Memphis Grizzlies, a couple of terrible calls that went against them late. I want to talk a little bit about that off the top and just why avoiding the play-in is so important. We're going to spend the later portion of the show talking a little bit about the Houston series, and then like we always do on these lives, we're going to do about 10-15 minutes of mailbag questions from the chat. So if you want to get questions in, just make sure you're subscribed to the channel, drop your questions in the chat. Jackson's going to hop on with us, and we'll go through some questions for 10-15 minutes. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. We have brand new social media feeds on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We're releasing content throughout the remainder or moving forward, and Jackson's doing some incredible work there. Make sure you guys follow us there. And then every week we do a mailbag. So drop your mailbag questions in the YouTube comments so that we can get to them throughout the remainder of the season. All right, let's talk some basketball. So I have a great deal of familiarity with the play-in game. I have rooted for my Lakers team through 3 of them already, and they've all been just like this, guys. There's no like, oh, we're going to just beat Memphis and go into the 2-7. It's like, no, we survived that. Remember the 3 rims game after LeBron hit the game winner over Steph? The one, was it 4 years ago now? The Wolves game, we had that huge 3 that Dennis Schroeder hits, and then all of a sudden Anthony Davis is fouling a shooter in the corner, and we're going to overtime, and we're just like barely surviving the Timberwolves. And then last year, it's like the Lakers beat the shit out of the Pelicans on that Sunday game, and you're like, oh, we're going to be good when we go there to play them again on Tuesday. And it's like, no, all of a sudden Zion is just playing the greatest game he's ever played and just knifing through LeBron and AD like butter. And if it wasn't for a hamstring injury, that game probably would have come down to the final handful of possessions. That's just what the play-in game is like. And that is why the Warriors wanted so badly to win that game on Sunday. There was an easy silver lining to point to be like, oh, well, would you rather play your next 4 weeks of this super high leverage basketball against the Lakers in the first round and then most likely the Clippers in the second round? Or would you rather face the Rockets in the first round and then the Lakers in the second round? I think we all would agree. I think most people that I speak to would agree that the Clippers are a better team, a more dangerous team than the Rockets. And so, yeah, you can kind of draw that out. But ultimately, if you can avoid that game, if you can avoid what you just went through tonight, I mean, it could have gone the other way just on a couple plays here and there, right? And that's why the Warriors wanted to win that game on Sunday so bad. That's why you want to avoid that situation. I talk all the time, when you end up in a close game, there is always the possibility that a bad call could go against you. And tonight it happened twice down the stretch for the Warriors, and they managed to overcome it. But like, that's exactly why that situation is so stressful, and that's why every game matters over the course of the regular season as you try to dig yourself out of that specific situation. But I want to talk a little bit about Jimmy Butler. And so we are changing our Microsoft segment. We've been doing it based on overcoming adversity over the course of the last couple of months, but we're focusing it more on the player of the week now. And we're going to focus that on Jimmy. Welcome to Course Correction, brought to you by Microsoft. Just like star players and teams navigating performance hurdles, business decision makers today are under immense pressure to get things right. They must rise to the occasion, turning challenges into opportunities. Microsoft empowers these visionaries with AI solutions, simplified cloud and data management, and trustworthy, responsible AI. When you're in the NBA, you have your own hurdles to face. In this segment, we will highlight the player of the week that has risen to the occasion when his team needed him. Whatever challenge you're facing, Microsoft empowers you with the expertise to say, bring it on. This week, we're discussing Jimmy Butler and his massive night to help the Warriors escape the play-in. I talked after the Clippers game about how there were some silver linings, obviously, right? And one of the biggest ones there was, Steph looks amazing, but also Jimmy, who had not really done a lot of volume scoring for the Warriors over the course of the stretch post-deadline. It was a lot of just connective additive stuff that wasn't necessarily going to show up in the box score, but that was clearly helping the team on both ends of the floor. But the championship ceiling that this team has, if there's one there, and we're going to talk a little bit about that after we get done with this game, but if that championship ceiling is there, it depends on Jimmy also being a volume scorer. And after he was a very effective volume scorer in that Clippers game, did it again tonight, 38 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, led a dominant stretch early in the game to explode the lead while Steph Curry was off the floor. He got to the free throw line 18 times, just was awesome in this game. I want to zoom in specifically on Jimmy's ability to get to the foul line for a second. I've talked a lot about this, and I always have to kind of split these two concepts because my attitude towards them is very different. Foul grifting as a league-wide problem, not something I love. I would like it if the game of basketball was primarily rewarding players for making basketball plays. But as long as it's allowed, grifting is a very important skill element. Now, just like any skill, you can lean on it too much. There are passers that lean on their playmaking too much and don't look enough to be aggressive as scorers. There are big power players, think like a Paolo Banchero or Joel Embiid, that sometimes will rely on their jump shot too much when they have gifts that will take them downhill towards the rim. Embiid and Harden over the years relied too much on their foul grifting at the expense of their ability to weaponize their other skills. But foul grifting is a very important skill to generate offense in this league. Jimmy Butler does it in my opinion, in a more aesthetically appealing way because it's less of some of the really janky stuff. And what he'll do is he'll just take little bizarre angles towards the basket where instead of driving at an angle to where he can more easily get a shot off, he'll drive at an angle that is more aggressive towards the rim defender and is actually just designed to get a foul. He'll take off at a weird spot. He'll take off a little bit early or he'll take off a little bit late. He'll tweak his angles and tweak his takeoffs to get guys to just jump and land on top of his shoulders. It's a very impressive gift that he has to get defenders out of position and to get to the foul line. And this was a Warriors team pre-All-Star break that was 23rd in the NBA in free throw attempts per game. And Jimmy has just added this entire other element to this offense. And you don't win that game tonight if Jimmy Butler doesn't bring that element. It came as part of a super versatile attack and on both ends of the floor. He was excellent on defense in this game, tied up Zach Edey a bunch of times underneath the basket. On offense, not just the grifting, to getting to the basket consistently as a cutter and as a slasher. He was attacking Santi Aldama and Zach Edey all over the floor, doing a ton of damage. Just an incredible night from Jimmy Butler when his team desperately needed him. 38, 7, and 6. Playoff Jimmy has been around. The Warriors have actually played about 5 straight true must-win games here to end the season. But that one and the one on Sunday are your 2 true Like that result directly swings where you're at in the playoffs. And Jimmy's just been fantastic in both games. And I think that bodes really well for the Warriors in the big picture. That is it for this week's course correction. Remember, Microsoft's AI solutions empower you to take bold steps and to make informed decisions, sparking new ideas to help drive your business forward. With Microsoft as your trusted partner, you can navigate your journey with confidence, finding innovative solutions and reaching new possibilities. Visit Microsoft.com/challengers to learn more. I want to talk about Steph for a little bit here. I was really impressed by the way that he just showed some resilience with the way he dealt with Memphis's physicality. Memphis, just like everyone's been doing to Steph for 15 years now, 10 years now, 12 years now, just was grabbing and holding him off the ball every single time that he's trying to get open on screening actions and stuff. And this has been the game plan against Steph forever. It's a very good game plan to use when you get in the postseason, because basically every star when you get into the postseason is playing basketball with a defender that has two hands on him. It's just super, super physical, whether it's on the ball or it's off the ball. And one of the things that Steph did late in the game that I thought was really smart is he started to use that physicality to his advantage. Hit two big threes down the stretch. And the first one was a play with John Conchar with about 6 minutes left, where he was kind of setting John Conchar up right around the elbow for him to come off of a screening action, I think with Looney, if I remember correctly, along the left wing. And if you watch, Steph like kind of sat there and set his man up and did a textbook set your man up for a screen and kind of push off kind of thing. Just walked into Konchar's chest and then just gave him a little shove as he took off. And that's the thing. These games are super physical. They are bloodbaths. This is a contact sport. The defense is going to be allowed to do a lot of shit to you, but you're also going to be allowed to do a lot of shit to the defense. And I thought it was awesome that instead of succumbing to the physicality, Steph brought the physicality at the tail end of the game. It was just a little tighter on his screening actions, a little more physical on his off-ball defender, shoving off, getting that separation, and getting some clean looks for himself. And then the last one was just that classic corner drop-off action, hit Draymond right as Steph is sprinting off of that cut, off of the left wing to the left corner. Two clean looks, and then adds in, just for fun, a classic Steph flare, that triple pump fake move that he uses on Scottie Pippen Jr. to hit the shot. I think he finished with 37 tonight on a night where it looked like he didn't have it early in the game. And that just goes to show you, like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. That was a long game. It looked like Memphis was dead in the water two separate times, and they battled back. It looked like Steph didn't have it going early in the game, but you just keep going. You just keep plugging away. You keep trying to find your advantages. You keep trying to solve the puzzle. And it's just about breaking through. And you could tell there was a good amount of relief from Steph when he ran down the floor after that triple pump fake sequence, because he felt like he had solved the puzzle in that particular game. Now, the Warriors put themselves into a tricky position by committing a couple of silly fouls down the stretch and gifting the Grizzlies with some free points and some sloppy turnovers. And they just ended up in a situation where it was a little closer than it needed to be. But when push came to shove and it came time to solve the puzzle, the Warriors were able to solve the puzzle. I was very impressed overall with Golden State's defense during the early portion of the game. I thought they lost control of it a little bit. It's always hard to like restart the motor after you let it shut off. And I think that they fell victim to that a little bit. But early in the game, I was really impressed with the Warriors. Just physicality, ball pressure, forced a lot of turnovers. Grizzlies really lost control of the transition game early as they just succumbed to the ball pressure, rushed, made some sloppy errors, passing out of those traps, passing out of that ball pressure, and they gave up a bunch of fast break opportunities the other way. The Warriors finished with 27 points off of Memphis's 20 turnovers in this game. And in general, too, just that speeding up of the perimeter players has a lot to do with the Warriors' ability to cover ground on the perimeter. I was prepping this morning for the Clippers Nuggets series. I recorded the previews for Denver, LA, and for LA, Minnesota this morning. They are both coming out tomorrow. So you guys will get full series previews on those two tomorrow. Series previews for both of the 2-7 matchups. I'm recording those tomorrow. They'll be going up on Thursday as we release them throughout the week. But as I was prepping for that Clippers Nuggets series, I was digging into some statistics involving the defenses and how many wide open threes they allow, or unguarded threes, as they call them on Synergy. And Denver predictably was bottom five in allowing unguarded threes, as I've just been talking a lot about their pick and roll defense and how they've really struggled with at the level coverage and giving up those 2-on-1s on the weak side and how they just end in open threes all the time. Well, guess who has the second best defense at not allowing those unguarded catch and shoot threes? The Golden State Warriors. And one of the we always debate like the concept of like eye test versus digging into these like catch-all metrics and how do you properly evaluate a player. Well, sometimes there's both. Sometimes you have a clear thing that shows up when you're watching the film, and then the numbers also clearly demonstrate it. I have talked all year about how the Warriors have been the most impressive closeout team that I've watched, and their ability to get out to the perimeter from having a foot in the paint to chase a defender off the three-point line or to make him rush his release and to cause that to be a lower quality attempt. And that is just on display in these early games from Golden State here at this point in the postseason. They are flying around. They look really, really good on defense. As a Laker fan, I'm thankful that we won't have to see those guys until an extra round against Houston. So let's talk about Houston for a minute. This is a kind of an interesting matchup. If you would have asked me after the Laker game, if Golden State would dispatch of Houston relatively quickly, I would have said yes. I would have said they would have gotten rid of them. This is the fifth consecutive, like really important game that the Warriors played where they looked a little shaky. They came out of the Laker game and went into that Rockets game, and Jimmy and Steph both struggled, they lose. And then they go into the Spurs game and they play well enough to win, but then they make execution mistakes down the end and they lose. And then they go to Portland and they win, but then they have this home game against the Clippers and they lose. And then they have this game against Memphis at home and they're trailing in the fourth quarter. And they just lacked some of that like oomph that they had in the week before. And so now I'm kind of having a hard time getting a read on this team because I feel like reality's probably somewhere in the middle, right? Like they're probably not the team that won every damn game after they got Jimmy, but they're also probably not the team that has struggled mightily over the course of the last week and a half. I think the kind of consistent thing I've seen is that Steph and Jimmy have been able to leverage their gifts in these last two games against these really higher quality opponents to be effective, but the rest of the roster has been really inconsistent. And that is a trend that scares me a little bit as the Warriors head into the postseason. Houston is a very difficult matchup for Golden State just in terms of the types of athletes that they have. You saw a lot of grabbing and holding of Steph tonight. It's going to be a lot more of that over the course of the next 2 weeks, except for it's going to be bigger and better athletes. It's not going to be Scottie Pippen Jr. It's going to be Dylan Brooks. It's going to be Amen Thompson. It's going to be Tari Eason. It's going to be big, strong, super athlete every single possession for that entire series. And you know from the dynamic that took place out of the game last Sunday that Ime Udoka views it as a weakness for this team. He views it as like, we get physical, they start crying. That's the way he views it. And so you know that he's preaching that. If you don't think Ime Udoka has been saying over and over and over again to his guys, this team doesn't want to play physical basketball, we can beat them up, I guarantee you that's what he's been saying. I guarantee you if the team had a watch party tonight, he was pointing to them and saying, look at this, we can do a better version of this when we face them in that series. And so, again, I think that's going to be really the big swing in the series is Steph, specifically, how he handles that physicality. It doesn't take a lot of critical thinking to say that he needs to be better than he was last week on Sunday, right? Like, he can't average 3 points a game against Houston. That's not going to work. Steph's going to have to be more effective than that. But I'm actually going to point a little bit towards Jimmy Butler and a role that Jonathan Kuminga could have in a series like this. In that type of series, you need your athletes. As you saw tonight, Jimmy just has this ability to leverage his size and strength to be successful in that environment. I talk about this all the time with Kawhi, with LeBron, with Luka, with Jimmy Butler. When you get into an environment where physicality is rewarded, the bigger, stronger athletes tend to go up a level. And Jimmy Butler is just such a great asset to have in that setting. But when you're going against Houston, you're going to have some physical advantages in the form of being able to get Jimmy the ball through screening action with Steph either advantage as they put 2 on Steph, or switches where Jimmy can go at a Fred VanVleet, where Jimmy could go at even like an Amen Thompson. Jimmy has a strength advantage there. And so weaponizing that throughout the series is going to be huge. And this is why I think Jonathan Kuminga is going to be a player that Steve Kerr is going to have to give a little bit more opportunity to as we head into that series. Jonathan Kuminga is an apex athlete among apex athletes. He is one of the few guys that is going to see the apex Houston athletes in front of him and be like, I can still go around and over the top of these guys. He's going to be a guy that's going to be able to generate advantages in that environment. And so I do think it'll be a series where they have to lean more on Jonathan Kuminga and Jimmy Butler. The other side of the ball, though, is where the series is going to be won. If the Warriors can take care of the ball and they can stay out of transition, they can trap Houston in the half court. If we see the defense we saw in the first half tonight, and for stretches against the Clippers on Sunday, if we see that defense engaged in the half court against Houston, they should be able to shut them down. And again, when it comes down to series picks, I always say the same thing. Which team do I feel like can make each other's units more uncomfortable? Is the Warrior defense more capable of making the Rockets offense uncomfortable than the Rockets defense can make the Warriors offense uncomfortable? That is a dynamic because I think this Warriors defense is truly special. I think they are capable of doing more damage to Houston's offense. And so I will be picking the Warriors to win that series, but it's going to be a pain in the ass. It's going to be 2 really tough weeks. It's going to be a lot of physicality on Steph. You saw Steph get a little banged up tonight. He's grabbing at his tailbone. He's grabbing at his thumb. It's going to be that kind of series. And so execution, avoiding the late game mistakes from tonight, avoiding the late game mistakes from the San Antonio game, making sure that you deal with this team quickly is going to be important. Because if you get rid of them in 5 games, that's where you could buy yourself 4 to 5 days off and give yourself a much better chance to be physically prepared for a series against the Lakers or against the Timberwolves. This is a series that if you let it drag and it goes to 6 games, it goes to 7 games, that's where it could end up being a series that wears the Warriors down in a way that the progressive fatigue just gets too much to handle over the course of a 4-series playoff run. Going to be an interesting series, though. Again, as I said, I'm going to be working on that preview tomorrow. It'll be up during the day on Thursday. Before we get to our chat mailbag, just brief thoughts on Memphis. I thought their defensive front court, which I've talked a lot about over the course of the last couple of weeks, just Zach Edey and Santi Aldama, the 2 of them just can't guard. They can't guard in space. The Zach Edey looked lost in like 17 different ways tonight. He looked lost defending on the perimeter. He struggled on the glass a few times. Every time he caught anything around the basket, he was getting stripped down low, like big man 101 stuff, like don't hold the ball down by your waist in front of you. Like every smaller player is just going to go grab it. They're in a situation where they just don't have the pieces necessary in the front court to be a good defense. And so it already is an uphill climb for Ja Morant and Desmond Bane. And they had a little nice run there in the second half, but they weren't able to keep up with Jimmy and Steph. And when you factor in the weakness of that defensive front court, it was just too much for them to overcome. They didn't get anything out of Jaren Jackson in this game. I think it's really important for Memphis to have some serious conversations after this season about their core foundation of their roster and what types of players they're building around. Because right now it's like Morant and Bane is a good backcourt, but how is Morant and Bane ranking among backcourts in the NBA? Is it top 7? Is it top 8? I mean, we can dig into that this summer, but that's not exactly an elite defensive backcourt. And then you go on the wing position, you've never been the same since you lost Dillon Brooks. Yeah, Jalen Wells had his moments this year, but he's just not the same type of imposing athlete. Jaren Jackson can't defend or rebound well enough at the 5 to be a 5, so you have to play him at the 4, which means you have to end up playing him alongside this other front court player, and that other front court player they have to play him alongside just isn't good enough right now. And so I think the Grizzlies have to have some really tough conversations with themselves this summer about the way their roster is constructed. All right, let's get Jackson out here. Let's take about 10, 15 minutes of questions, and then we will be done for the night.
Let's do it. We are going to start with a Zach Edey question. What was the idea with putting Zach Edey on Butler for the majority of the game? I understand daring Butler to shoot, but Jimmy got whatever he wanted off the bounce.
I thought he did a better job in the second half of staying out of foul trouble and
Yeah.
being more anticipatory of like his angles. It's a really tough spot to put Zach Edey in for one game. Over the course of a series, it's something that might have been a little bit more achievable as Zach just got better at anticipating the types of moves that Jimmy would make. But it's just a really tough spot, especially with the type of grifter that Jimmy is. You know, you do that against a guy that's more of just a straight power player. Zach can just kind of anticipate, beat him to spots, force him to shoot over the top. But Jimmy's one of those guys where it's like, as soon as Zach just gets a little bit squirrely with his footwork and gets out of position one way or the other, Jimmy's just taking a weird driving angle and drawing a foul on him. But I think the idea was probably mostly geared around baiting or preying on Jimmy's unwillingness to take jump shots. I think they thought if Zach Edey was on him and he was playing off, maybe he would just be willing to pass instead of just taking the easy jumpers that he was giving him. But I thought even Jimmy hit enough jumpers to kind of keep them honest in that regard. He hit a little jab step 3 in the first half. I thought that little baseline step back he hit in crunch time was super important too.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I think the Grizzlies are just, to your point about their front court defense, they're in a tough spot regardless. Like, what are you supposed to do with Zach Edey against?
Yeah, where else are you putting him?
You're not. There's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't got any good options against. I mean, against some teams he can survive, but against a team like the Warriors with that much motion and that many high IQ players, I mean, you're cooked either way. All right, next one. We've gotten a fair amount of Kuminga questions. I know we talked about him a little bit already, but let's follow up here. Hey, Jason, love the show. Why is Steve Kerr sticking with Moses Moody in the starting lineup when he's in a massive 3-point slump the past 10 to 15 games? Why not play Kuminga in that spot? And I think we can sort of just expand it to, I mean, you already touched on him having a role in this Rocket series, but another question we got was about, will it be challenging for Kuminga to reintegrate himself back into the rotation after he's had a couple of DMPs? It is a weird spot, I think, for Kuminga and the team in general.
So I think it's a little more complicated because Moody hasn't been shooting the ball as well. Although he did end up hitting a 3 tonight, a 3 where it looked like he got fouled on it too.
Yeah.
The idea there is let's get back to like the core concept, because even beyond the starting lineup, it's going back to the press conference where Steve Kerr was it after the, I think it was after the Blazers game, might have been after the Spurs game, but he basically said like the Kuminga, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green lineups just can't play. And I think it's a couple of different things. One, the role on defense that you want Kuminga to play as this like on-ball defender, I think he's probably a little more imposing than Moody for certain types of matchups, but Moody is also a little better in other types of matchups, and I would argue that Moody is a little steadier as an on-ball defender. So now as we look on the offensive end of the floor, within the context of Jimmy, Draymond, and Steph being on the floor, Kuminga is going to be operating either as a corner spot-up player or as a read and react player in the middle of the floor. Is he as good as a read and react player in the middle of the floor as Moses Moody? No, he's actually one of the worst players on the team in that specific role. And is he as good as Moses Moody as like just a knockdown corner 3-point shooter? Even though Moody's going through a cold spell, I would argue Kuminga's equally as flaky in that type of role. And so honestly, within the context of the starting unit or within the context of Jimmy and Draymond being on the floor, Kuminga's just not good at the types of things they need with that type of group, right? And I do believe that you're going to need him, especially in the Houston series, in different types of lineups. So, like, put him out there in a lineup with, like, Quentin Post with Jimmy and Jonathan Kuminga, and have him, like, kind of like, you know how, like, the Jimmy group was super successful in that like late first quarter, early second tonight, but then kind of lost steam in the late third, early fourth tonight. That's where it's like, okay, Jimmy had it going in the first shift there, didn't have it going in that second half shift, having the ability to go to another like real downhill threat that can generate some offense, but has some spacing because Quentin Post is like a legit knockdown guy. Like that's the difference. The difference between Quentin Post and a traditional spacing 5 is like, if it's a traditional spacing 5, if it's Nikola Vucevic, for instance, you're like, let's see him make a couple before we even do anything. Quinn Post is like a legit awesome shooter. Like if you leave him open, you're going to get burned. Zach Edey lost him twice in transition early in this game, and he just nailed both of them. You can't give Quentin Post open looks. He will invert the spacing enough to where Jonathan Kuminga has some more driving lanes. when Draymond's out there, when Jimmy's out there, when Kuminga's out there, there's just a lot of ability to pack the paint, not enough IQ to actually pick it apart appropriately. It's just not the right fit. And so I don't think, frankly, to answer the question, I don't think there's any case for Kuminga to start these games.
Yeah, I agree. I do think, to your point, it's pretty. That being said, it is pretty easy to think about lineups where he can be successful. Like a Pods, Kuminga, Jimmy post group with like Gary Payton or Buddy. Like it's pretty easy to think about lineups where he can be very successful and very important in a series like this. And I'm so in agreement about Quentin Post. I mean, I think he's been just so awesome, and it's going to be really. I think he's going to be crucial in this series for against a team that plays two
Well,
bigs a
really
lot.
quickly before you ask the next question, the like to follow up your
Yeah,
point about putting lineups together too, like you need to put lineups together that fit his style. So like put him with play
yeah,
finishers. And
yeah.
then if you want to have another player on the floor that's more of a playmaking talent, it is Jimmy. But if you have him out there with play finishers, so let's say it's, healed or it's healed and post, and let's say like maybe like a Guy Santos. I don't know, like another guy that you feel like can
Mhm.
knock down catch and shoot jump shots. Change the style of the offense when he's out there to cater to him. Be like, okay, here's the deal, Jonathan. Like for the next 3 minutes here to start the fourth quarter, we're gonna let you clear the side in ISO and let's see what you can do, and we can play
Right,
off of
right,
it.
right,
Like
right.
that's my thing is like especially for the Houston series in particular. Like, don't just play him and then play Warriors basketball and have him pee down his leg again as he doesn't know how to play Warriors basketball. Put him in a situation where he can play Jonathan Kuminga basketball. Jonathan's really good. I shouldn't say really good, but he's really capable as like a face-up player,
Yeah,
as a post-up player when he has an advantage and when he has space around him. You can put together lineups that put him in that sort of situation.
100%. I mean, anytime you're getting Şengün or Steven Adams switched on Jonathan Kuminga, it should be give him the
Yeah.
ball and clear out. Like that is a
Yeah.
dunk every time that happens. So it's not like he can't be useful in this series. All right, next question. This was a super chat question, so thank you guys for the super chat questions. Do you think teams are more injury prone this season? And if so, do you think that's a matter of less practicing around the league? I've heard a lot of former NBA players weigh in on this sort of lack of practice time issue.
So I have a really hard time having any sort of strong opinion on this front because I think the data is all wonky. One, I'm not super familiar with the data. Two, I think the data is kind of impossible to account for just how like the way the eras have shifted kind of changes the data. So for example, like I think the medical staffs today are having a lot more of these kinds of conversations. How's your body feeling today? Well, I'm a little sore.
Mhm.
Well, where are you sore? Well, here, here, and here. Well, okay, tell me about this one. You've actually mentioned this one like 3 days in a row. What's the deal with this one? Well, yeah, it's just been kind of sore. Okay, you're not playing tonight. I think there's been a lot more of that kind of stuff where like the barrier to entry for like getting onto the floor versus being sat for a game is just different than it was all these years ago. And so it's hard for me to say
Yeah,
exactly in term of like what of those is a legitimate injury versus just like a rest situation. And I think it probably has a little bit to do in terms of the more serious injuries, like the season-ending type of stuff that we've seen tick up a little bit over the last couple years. I think it just has to do with how spread out the game is. Like you just have to cover so much more ground these days. There's more possessions in a game. You're sprinting more in transition in a game than you ever have been before. You're covering ground in rotation more in a game than you ever have before. There's just a lot of sprinting full speed and then coming to a complete stop as fast as you possibly can and then changing direction and going the other way. Like all of you guys who play basketball know you do that a few times, your feet start to hurt. Now imagine doing it for an 82 game regular season. You can imagine how you might start breaking down.
yeah, absolutely. All right. This is a fun question. What series or potential future series, let's say excluding the first round series, in a second or third round series, what are the series that you'd be most excited for to watch as a fan?
Lakers Warriors would be incredible.
Yep.
I think that I've been torn on the OKC versus potentially
Mm-hmm.
Denver versus potentially the Clippers. I Jokic did beat OKC on the road like a month ago, but it was a game where J Dub got hurt. but they beat him, I think, twice this year, and Jokic has looked really good in that matchup. So part of me wants to say Denver, but then the Clippers have just looked like a really imposing team, and I think Kawhi would do a lot of damage attacking smalls in that series. I'm gonna go with Clippers Thunder on the other side of the bracket. Out east,
Mhm.
I would love I would love to see Knicks Celtics in a series just because I think that could get pretty interesting. And I don't think the Pistons have the juice for a series like that, even though I think the Pistons have the ability to potentially
No.
upset the Knicks. And then
Yeah.
I'm rooting for Giannis. I don't know if you guys have been watching Giannis as
Me
of
too,
late, but
man.
like Giannis is fucking crushing it, man. And like legitimately taking a leap as a playmaker before our eyes, and there is a legitimate basketball case to make right now that the Bucks are better just giving the ball to Giannis than running the offense they've been running with Dame, which is just how insanely good Giannis has been. So I would vote for Giannis as a second round matchup against the Cavs as a series that I would like to see.
Yeah, I agree with all those. And I think all after the first round, whatever happens with the Thunder
Hmm.
is going to be fascinating because they're just so polarizing. It's like you're not giving them enough credit. They're this historic team, historic defense. You don't believe in the Thunder, or like or the opposite, right? And the narratives are going to play
Yeah.
out in real time, whether they beat the Clippers or beat the Nuggets or lose to them, whether they end up getting to the conference finals or the finals. It's just the narratives around the Thunder are just they're
There's
just
either going to
so
be some
fun.
people taking some victory laps. Well, there's going to be people taking victory laps on either side of it. But the beautiful thing, you mentioned it, it plays out
Yeah.
in real time. That's the beautiful thing about the NBA playoffs. We could talk shit. I could talk shit. I can make a pick. You can make a pick. I could say you guys are wrong in the comments. You guys could tell me in the comments that I'm wrong. It really doesn't matter. The games are going to get played and a team's going to advance. And that's the beautiful thing is this all just gets settled between the lines. That's the beauty of basketball.
Absolutely. All right, let's do one more. How do you see the Steve Kerr and Ime Udoka matchup? What do you think of what do you think their strategies will be, and how can a team outcoach another?
So Ime Udoka as a playoff coach, looking back at the series against the Warriors, I was critical of him at the time for running as much drop coverage as he did. Um, his case for it was to keep the Warriors out of their 4-on-3 type of predicament that they can put you in. Essentially, like if you let the Warriors play the way they did at the tail end of the 2015 finals, where they're just getting wide open corner threes and dunks all series long, you can lose. And there's some truth to that. But the counter is that when you run a bunch of drop against Steph Curry, there's always the potential that he could get flaming hot. And he did in the one game where they could not afford for Steph Curry to get flaming hot, which was in game 4, and it beat them. And so I was like, that was really my only exposure to Ime Udoka as a chess match coach. I think Steve
Mhm.
Kerr is one of the best chess match coaches in the league. As having
I
rooted
agree.
against him in a playoff series many times, I just think he's really good at picking up on the trends of the series, identifying what's working and adjusting accordingly. He'll bail on their motion offense and lean on high pick and roll for Steph if that's what the series calls for. He is a very malleable coach when it gets into the postseason. So my instinct is to say that Steve Kerr has a tactical advantage and that Ime Udoka is mainly going to be an influence on the series in terms of just trying to get the Rockets to beat the shit out of the Warriors on every single possession. But we just don't have a ton of data points with Ime Udoka as a tactician, if that makes sense.
I have the exact same take that Ime feels like a slightly more stubborn coach, but we don't have the sample size. That being said, it's so interesting that his personnel now also is better in drop.
Yeah.
Like you're not really switching with Steven Adams or Sengun. I would assume they're not going to switch with those guys, and I would assume he's not going to blitz based on his past sort of history. So it'll be interesting to see. It's not like his personnel is different from in the front court in that sense. What kind of adjustments he makes going against a team that he lost to in the finals. Oh, what a different team, obviously, a few years ago. And I think, and I've spoken with Draymond about this, how much he loves Steve's ability, and he thinks Steve is the best playoff adjuster coach in NBA history. I mean, he's biased, obviously, but
He's right, in my
it's
opinion.
I think he's right, and I think that like even the giving Kuminga 2 DMPs, like he's gonna play in the Rocket series. He's not getting DMPs every game, but he's had 2 straight DMPs, and he is just so willing and has the team so bought in culturally that to trust his moves. It's a really impressive sort of ecosystem they've created. I mean, I'm sure part of that is Steph and Dre sort of buying in as well, but he really is able to make whatever move he thinks is right. And I feel like a lot of coaches will just stick to what their thing more than what actually might be the
So
best
you're
thing.
saying that
So.
the Warriors locker room does not agree with Jim Park with respect to Steve Kerr.
Jim Park, shout out Jim Park.
I want to spend a few more minutes on the Rockets matchup.
Yeah,
I think you're right. I think they're going to run drop with their man looks with Şengün. I think part of the reason why Udoka feels very good about that is the Amen Thompson problem, which is that he's just very
for
gifted at
sure.
staying attached over the top of screens. Because in theory, if you can stay attached over the top of a screen against a non-shooter, so against pick and pop, you're conceding open threes on the kickback. But against a Looney, against a Draymond, against a screener that's not going to be a really deadly shooting threat, as long as you can stay attached over the top, it doesn't really matter how bad the drop coverage big is because you're not going to get any separation in the
Yeah,
mid range. He's going to funnel you right into the size at the rim. Where it gets tricky is for Golden State if they can set really good screens. So like how the series is officiated in terms of the types of screens that Draymond and
yeah,
Looney are allowed to set is going to be important. And then the second piece of it is the zone looks. So I think we can all agree one of the issues that's kind of popped up for the Warriors over the course of the last couple of weeks has been shooting. It's just been inconsistent. It's like one game against the Lakers, everybody makes every damn three, and then for a week after that, no one can make anything. There's a certain amount of inconsistency in the shooting of this roster. That makes them a little susceptible to zone looks. The Rockets are going to run a ton of zone, especially with Steven Adams on the floor. They've been running
mm,
variations of it with Jabari Smith as their under the rim guy, where he kind of like comes up out of the paint a little bit more, and then they'll run versions of it where Steven Adams just sits underneath the basket. But they're going to have to beat that with high level playmaking sequences or with jump shooting. And when they faced off last week on Sunday, they ran 10 possessions, I believe, of zone and only scored 6 points on them. So that's where it could get a little tricky is like it doesn't really matter if you set monster screens and drop and cause all these issues if you can't shoot the Rockets out of their zone. And so I think this is an interesting series. There's a lot of really fun subplots within this series that could, like, what if Dylan Brooks shoots 50% from three? Like Jalen
100%.
Green is a weird wild card in the sense that he is a guy that takes like 8, 9 crazy difficult pull-up jump shots a game. And like he'll have games where he has 37 and you lose. I've been on the other side of that in a game the Lakers lost in Houston earlier this year. Like there's a lot of wild cards here. The Rockets are not a 2 seed by accident. They are a damn good team.
Yeah.
But the Warriors are smarter. The Warriors are more skilled. The Warriors are more experienced. As long as they can hold on to the rope and win the execution battle, I think they have a really good chance to win that series. We got anything else tonight, or is that it? All
I
right,
think let's
guys.
call it
As
there.
always, we sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting us and supporting the show. Tomorrow, we're going to have our breakdowns of the two series out in the Western Conference, the Nuggets Clippers and the Lakers Timberwolves. Then Thursday, we're also going to have the 2-7 breakdowns. I also am going to do a brief video, short video, like 10, 15-minute video that just goes over my contender rankings because we didn't get a chance to do that. I was trying to get Sam Vecini on the show. We had something worked out, but he's actually in the States right now doing he's like super connected in the league and doing a bunch of stuff where he's been unavailable. So not going to be able to do the Sam Vecini contender rankings this year. So I'll just do a shorter version of it for the channel. And then we're right around the corner from the playoffs. Can't wait. It's been a blast. It's going to be a crazy 2 months. I appreciate you guys for supporting us, and we will see you tomorrow.